Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
I am an artist living in beautiful Vermont, USA, and I have a lot of questions. So I engage the minds of the people that I meet. Poets, writers, artists. I explore what's inside and share it with you. My name is Ricky McGeckran, and I am eager to know.
Charlie, thank you for joining me on Eager to Know. I'm not sure if you remember this, but when I first moved to Vermont back in April of this year, you were one of the first people that I called, and I went to your studio and we met, and I was very eager to talk to you because 10 years ago, when I decided that I was going to take painting seriously, I had seen your artwork here in Vermont, and it really spoke to me, and it kind of validated like what I thought I wanted to be as a painter, and I saw that in your work.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so I'm really excited that you are now on my podcast.
Well, it's a joy to be here. Even if I do show up a little bit late, my intent is always very, very pure.
All
so
right.
It's a joy to be here.
Well, and intention is so important.
All right.
Now, I know that you grew up in New Hampshire and you grew up in Vermont, and I know that trains and barns were a big part of your childhood.
That is correct. Yeah, I grew up, we were in Milford, New Hampshire, where my dad ran a print shop. And we had a wonderful place where we lived, which was a 1816 farmhouse. 16 rooms, 1 bathroom, 4 kids, 2 parents, 1 grandmother. Actually, she had her own bathroom. And we had barns out back. It had been a dairy farm. And it was just a great place to explore when you're a kid, you know, and you can just injure yourself in so many creative ways.
Yeah.
And then the state of New Hampshire announced they were putting a bypass around Milford, and our barns were in the way of the bypass, and that took care of the barns. And I think as a child, that was so profoundly sad that it was really something I had to work through for years and years and years. And so the agriculture, the decline of small-scale agriculture has been always for me kind of one of the right objects, you know, one of the things I go back to over and over again in my work. And similarly with trains, in Milford there was a wonderful little branch line of the Boston and Maine Railroad, and this little freight train would trundle through every day, heading north to Hillsborough, and then late in the day heading back south. And I fell in love with that little train. And actually that is one of the few branch lines of the old Boston and Maine that still exists. It only runs up as far as Wilton now, but and then actually to a gravel pit a little bit beyond that. But at least that line still is with us.
And I think you had mentioned that I'd seen somewhere that you were impressed by the what was written on the cars.
Yeah,
and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, the moment I fell in love with trains is etched in my mind. I was on my way back from Little League, and the southbound little branch line train came through, and the late afternoon light was hitting the side of the boxcar, and the boxcar said Nickel Plate Road, and I just thought that was the neatest name. The typography was great, and the name was so mysterious. What is a Nickel Plate Road? You know, and eventually found out.
That is so, I feel like you're so lucky that something like that made an impression on you as a kid, you are able to keep with you as an adult, and you're able to use it as material or fuel or however you want to call it for your creativity.
Well, I was very, very lucky in that my parents were really supportive of my doing art. I mean, I remember once saying to my mom that I was reading a book on advertising. And I think in most kind of middle-class families, the parents would be, oh, thank goodness it's a creative channel for his art, you know.
Yeah.
And my mother would be like, well, you'd have to kind of sell your soul to the devil to go into advertising, wouldn't you? So I mean, they were very fine with me going ahead doing art, and they were not terribly enthusiastic about my turning the art to commercial ends.
Which you never did, right?
Oh, I was a graphic designer.
Oh, you were a graphic designer.
It's funny, I think about that now. My dad ran a print shop. He knew how to run the press. He knew how to do layout. He knew how to distribute type. All that has gotten so atomized. You have designers now, but a designer doesn't know how to run a press. Well, now there's so few presses, it's all copiers. But my dad really could do everything. Just about everything. Yeah. The presses were always so temperamental that when he went into business for himself, his print shop in Milford grew and grew, and he never got time to print anymore. He was having to manage.
Be the business manager.
And he hated that.
Yeah.
So he sold, when they put the highway through, he sold the print shop. We moved back to the family where my great aunts lived up in Wethersfield Center, Vermont. And he started a one-man print shop, and that made him much happier, except and his favorite press was a little offset press called a multilith, and it was very temperamental. And when it was working well, he wouldn't let anybody into the press room with him, because he said that it would he and the press were getting along at that moment. He didn't want anybody else in there.
Now, when did you start drawing? I assume when you started as an artsy kid, it was drawing.
Yeah,
is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean,
and what were you drawing? And
well, we had a very large bulletin board we had to fill up every month in the kitchen. It was a 4 foot by 6 foot piece of Celotex, kind of that board you can put thumbtacks in. And so my mother was always, you have to do drawings of pussy willows. You have to do a drawing of, whatever was going on.
Was she doing this to your other 3 siblings as well, or just you?
I think I was her last child, so I got the full attack of my mom's wanting to instill creativity in someone. You
were the last chance to have a creative kid.
Exactly. Well, no, my oldest sister was very creative as well, but she really, I guess I really took to drawing at a very young age, and I remember asking her how to draw a barn, and I remember very, very clearly her sitting me down and starting to draw, and me thinking to myself, she is going to be no help whatsoever. That woman could not draw her way out of a paper bag.
Do you think that you were gifted as a drawer, or do you think that it's something that you just kind of learn from doing? It sounds like from the comment you just made about your mom, maybe there's a little bit of a genetic predisposition, or just who you are.
I tend to think in terms of creativity that people have a slight leaning towards something, but and maybe 1 in a million people have a real genius for it. I'm not a genius. I don't think I'm particularly great at it. It's just that I've done it a lot. I think I had it was slightly the easiest way for me to express myself, and so I stuck with that, and now I've put in the hours that I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But I certainly don't think I was extraordinarily gifted.
Yeah, I remember I took a class at the Florence Academy of Art in Florence, Italy, and I remember the painting teacher saying that it's not about being gifted; it's about doing the work.
Right. Well, I think you've got the gift is knowing what creative pursuit is the one that's most open to you, because like people are musicians. I think you have a little predilection toward music.
Yep.
And then you are willing to spend every afternoon up in your room practicing guitar.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I loved music, and I had a guitar, but I did not want to sit and practice it.
Yeah, but you didn't mind doing the drawing.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about music a little bit, because I know that when you got out of school, you started doing graphic design for bands. Is that accurate? And then I know that you were involved in like a business aspect to music as well. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's basically accurate. When I went off to college, the deal with my parents was they would pay the tuition, the room and board and tuition, and I had to make the money for my books and any spending money, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So I arrived in New Haven, and was walking down the street, and I passed a rock club that had not very good signs in the handwritten signs in the window, and I went in and struck a deal with them. So all during college, I worked at Toad's Place, which was a great rock club in that era. It still exists, but it was a terrific rock room, and did a lot of window displays, big posters in the club itself, posters on the wall, on the display windows, doing all the tickets, just all the graphics for them. Yeah. And that led to getting a lot of work with musicians who had passed through there.
Okay.
And then after I graduated, I went to work for a company in Turners Falls, Massachusetts, that had been part of a cult, had just left the cult. And their big business was doing posters for colleges. Okay. So acts like The Clash would have a record come out, and maybe the record was not as much of a hit as the previous record, so their tour would get kind of diverted to colleges.
Okay.
And there were these middle agents who would book the college dates, and the company I worked with had a deal with the middle agents that the middle agents would say, this is the authorized tour poster for this tour, and I would design the tour poster. So I did The Clash, Eurythmics, REM, Jerry Garcia, a whole bunch of people. Then I became a music manager after that.
Okay. Now, when you went from drawing, I assume when you were living in Vermont, New Hampshire, you're drawing pussy willows and you're drawing barns and trains, and now you are doing more of a graphic design poster for musicians. Was that a big jump? Was that natural?
It was really natural.
It was nearly natural.
It was really natural.
Why is that?
Well, because when I was a little kid, and my dad, and we'd moved back to Vermont, my dad was doing the one-man print shop. My parents started a weekly newspaper, the Wethersfield Weekly, the smallest newspaper in New England, circulation of 600. And I did a lot of the page layouts and the ad layouts for that. And my favorite ad layouts to do was for the Top Hat Bar and Grill in Ascutney, Vermont. And they used to have all the great country musicians of that era who were on the road. I saw Kitty Wells, I saw Ernest Tubb and the Texas Troubadours. I did I did ad layouts for them.
Okay.
So it was just a very natural growth and change.
Great. Now, when we think about music, I assume you listen to music while you're painting. Is that accurate? Is that generally part of your painting process? You're listening to music?
Not so much anymore.
Not so much anymore.
It used to be very much. I used to, as Leonard Cohen says, remember me, I used to live for music. Remember me, I brought your groceries in. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But I used to listen to music all the time. Nowadays, I'm kind of just more in my head.
Okay.
And I listen to a lot of audiobooks now.
Oh, wow. I see. I couldn't do that. I couldn't listen to people speaking while I was painting. It would be too distracting to me.
Oh, I like that because it keeps my conscious mind thinking about the book, and that allows the unconscious mind to do what it wants to do.
Okay. Well, the reason why I asked it is because personally, music and painting are very intertwined for me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I will look at an old painting of mine that I may have done 7 years ago, and I can look at a certain part of that painting and I remember what I was listening to with music.
Right.
Like there's something in my brain that is getting merged. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about that. And it just sort of evolved out of that, but I'm right there with you for a large part of my life.
Good. Now, one of the things that I know you did in college was something that is not drawing landscapes, and that is figure drawing. And I know that I had seen that you had said you were very lucky that you were forced to do that on a regular basis. I know that for me, I'm going to tell you my opinion on figure drawing. I feel like it's like yoga for artists. I feel like regardless of what you do as a visual artist, doing a figure is going to calibrate what you see with what your hand is doing. And you're also a built-in art teacher. because you don't have to be a professional artist to know if anything is off just the slightest. You will know as a human being, not as an artist.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
So tell me about figure drawing, and like, how is that something you still do? Do you feel like that was critical to you being an artist?
I don't think it was critical to my being an artist, but it certainly has been an integral part of my artistic practice. In college, William Bailey was the main teacher I had. To be an undergrad art, at Yale you couldn't be an undergrad graphic design major. There was a graphic design school, a grad school, so you had to be an art major with a concentration in graphic design, which was actually wonderful because the deans had to spend much more time thinking about what your course of study was than for most of the students. There were two of us who were art majors with a concentration in graphic design, and they decided that we needed to take drawing 3 days a week for our first 3 years. 3 days a week, every week for your first 3 years. And that I had no desire to do that. I was like, I wanted to be drinking. I didn't want to be up at 8 a.m. and I certainly didn't want to be drawing, naked people of varying vintage. But in retrospect, I am so glad that they made me do it. And then of course I fell in love with the practice over time, and I certainly have kept doing it throughout my life.
Is it something you still do now?
Well, there was a nasty bug that started going around in 2000, and that kind of killed all the life drawing for a while, and I haven't taken it up since then. Is there any life drawing going on around here now?
I have not done it. I know that there is someone that does it in Brattleboro, I believe.
Yeah, no, we got to get it going up here again.
I would completely support that, and I would definitely get involved in it. I know, getting back to when I went to Florence, Italy, obviously figure drawing is a huge deal there, and to be a model there's plenty of people that's their full-time job, and they even have a handler that comes, and these people can hold a pose for 6 hours, which is
wow.
You need to be a pro to be able to do that. But I would love to do it more regularly because, as I mentioned to you, I just think it is such a great foundational skill as a visual artist to do. I think it fine-tunes and recalibrates at the deepest level like I said.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the best descriptions of why it's worth doing that I've heard. Because you just hit the nail on the head with the thing that if you get it wrong, you got it wrong. Whereas if you're drawing a tree, you can lie like a rug and no one's going to know.
Totally.
But yeah, they were doing it at Main Street Arts in Saxon's River for a while, but then that's fallen by the wayside. So we should campaign to get them to do it.
All right. Well, I'm involved in Main Street Arts now, so maybe we can make it happen there.
Well, they had the thing that was great during the aughts and teens, the life drawing up here, is that they got a lot of the people from the New England Circus Arts School, and so they were really flexible and could hit remarkable poses. The other thing that was great is they were really competitive. So you could say that, like, well, Raven, she held this pose for 2 hours last. I can do that. So it's like, yeah, that's the kind of person you want to be having pose for you.
Now, I know a lot of what you paint is stuff from the past, maybe things that are in disrepair. That is something that I have an affinity for in some of my painting. I know that I like to think of it as something was once new and it's no longer new anymore, but maybe you can see some of that shining through. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think there is an inherent attraction to man-made objects that bear the traces of wear and tear. And a friend of mine, a Chicago artist named Matt Barber Kennedy, he loves painting, the same dilapidated buildings as you or I do. He also loves to paint like, oil, hand oil cans and hand tools, wrenches and things like that show the mark of years. And I think that is, it ties us to what has come before. And I think the older we get, the more hallowed the track of human history becomes. That you when you're a kid, you see an old wrench, you say the old wrench. When you're an adult, you see an old wrench, you say, God, I wonder where that is, where that's been. When that was a brand new Craftsman wrench, was it working on a Edsel? Was it working on a GTO? Was it working on a Gremlin?
I remember years ago, I went to Chicago, and there was this liquor store with the sign with all the flickery bulbs that they have there, and it was very elaborate, and it was a green sign, and it was very large, and there was a homeless person like passed out in front of it, and it was in a area of town that was not a great area of town. And all I could think of was, at one point, this sign was brand new. They probably had a party celebrating our new sign, and they invited their friends and their business associates, and they had such hope for their business in the future that they invested in this beautiful sign. And I could still see that in the sign, even though it probably had 3 bulbs, flickering bulbs remaining. But yeah, it's kind of the same exact thing as the example that you just gave on the toolbox,
right.
The hand tool.
That what you're saying about that sign at the liquor store reminds me of the great Fred Eaglesmith song "White Rose," which he's Canadian, and White Rose was a Canadian gas station chain, and it's using the metaphor of the sign as the kind of diminution of dreams. Because it's that big white rose up on the sign. It was the innocence in all our lives. You could see its neon from half a mile out, And now, of course, the sign is derelict and the station is closed. So yeah, I think stuff like that has a tremendous heart pull, on us.
Nice. Now I know that you are a big part of the community in terms of a lot of your time is invested in at least the Bellows Falls community where we are right now. I don't know if the broader community. Have you always been that type of person, or is that something new? Tell me about that aspect of you.
Well, in 2021, I started working with the town to help kind of develop and market the Bellows Falls Opera House. And I'm taking that pretty seriously, and basically it's like a half-time job right now. It could be a full-time job, but since it's volunteer, it's a half-time job. Thank you very much. I think it's important to do volunteer work. I mean, especially if you're in a position where I do well enough with the art that I am not starving. So I have time to give to the community. I think anybody in my position should be doing that.
Okay. And one comment about the Opera House is they do movies there, and they are $6.
Yes.
And it is also $5 for a popcorn soda candy combination.
The triple up.
Which is reason enough to move to the area.
And we show first run movies for $6, and then every Wednesday we have Classic Film Wednesdays, which is sponsored by a person or business. They get to choose the movie. No Disney or Fox, unfortunately. They don't license to little movie theaters like ours. But it's a wonderful way to see a beloved movie on the big screen. Like I sponsored Galaxy Quest a couple of years ago. That was so cool seeing it on a big screen. Oh, it's the best.
Yeah, I know It's a Wonderful Life is going to be there this week, and then I think next week it's going to be either Holiday Inn or White Christmas.
White Christmas.
All right, so I'm totally going to that. I love White Christmas.
Yeah. And two shows on the Classic Film Wednesdays the next 2 weeks for Christmas. And this week, with It's a Wonderful Life, sponsored by Coda and Coda, free triple up, one free triple up with each party. So if there are 4 of you buying tickets, you get one triple up. If there's just one of you buying a ticket, you get one triple up for free.
I will definitely have to check that out.
All right.
Well, Charlie, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. This was really great to get to know you and to get to know you better.
Oh, this was great fun. Thank you. And this is a wonderful series that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've done a lot of them, as you can see.
Yeah.
So I've done, so obviously this is a podcast, and I think I have 104 episodes. So I've been doing it for about 3 years.
Am I 104 or 105?
Well, depending on when you go live, I think you'll be 105.
Hot diggity.
So, yeah. Well,
That's
thank
great.
you.
Thank you, Rick.
My name is Ricky McGuckran, and you have been listening to Eager to Know, the podcast. If you haven't already, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another Eager to Know podcast.